We'll do it live.
Okay. No.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Change the name of the high school and all James Woods can say is ooh, I'll be second day. 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 When a ball turned into a vampire, all James Woods could say was ooh, I'll be second day. 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 They sat around the house and said, ooh, I'll be second day. 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 And you know that James Woods writes his lines real well, but everything that he reads becomes real hard to spell. Everyone tries to help him, but the words just won't come out. There's only one thing he can think of, and it's what comes out his mouth. Second day, ooh, I'll be second day. Ooh, I'll be second day. Ooh, I'll be second day. When he comes out of his house, the women scream and shout. Ooh, I'll be second day. 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 When they know that he's next to the best of them all, when he says, ooh, I'll be second day. I'll be second day. Ooh, I'll be second day. Ooh, I'll be second day. Reese's Pieces on the floor and watch him come a saying. Ooh, I'll be second day. 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 And you know that James Woods writes his lines real well, but everything that he reads becomes real hard to spell. Tries to help him, but the words just won't come out. There's only one thing he can think of, and it's what comes out his mouth. Oh! Ooh, I'll be second day. 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 When he comes out of his house, the women scream and shout. Ooh, I'll be second day. Ooh, I'll be second day. Ooh, I'll be second day. I'll be second day. Ooh, I'll be second day.
Fucking thing sucks.
Well, now, howdy, and howdy, and how y'all doing? How's your mama and them? It is. It's ExtraBulla Live. I'm your host, Uncle Warren. It is a Wednesday evening here in the city of Wind, or so the Windy City, I should say. But it sounds more like important when you say the city of Wind, like you're one of those 1970s superhero cartoon show announcers. Meanwhile, back at the Hall of Justice. All right, folks. We got to see who's here. We got Miguel here. What's up, Miguel? Good to see you. Bella's here. And Max is here too. Whose wasn't on? What are you talking about? You guys worry me about people in the chat. Chuck's Intergalactic UFO Show out here in the stratosphere, hanging out with us. Willie Bragg. Willie, what's going on? Good to see you, my man. My guest tonight has been on Willie's show, and fantastic. I've been on there a couple of times. Good shows. We're going to have a good one tonight, too. So it's going to be better than yours, Willie. You know why? Because I brought snacks. Woo! Bet you didn't. What? Who's lying to people and getting away with it? All right, I think that's everybody. Oh, wait. We are Ronan. Bum, 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 bum. Good to see you, my friend. Welcome. I'm sure others will pile in per their court mandates. All right, folks. So my guest this evening, of course, is the author of Crime of the Century, classic rock and true crime. And like I said, she was on the Willie Bragg Show, and she's with us tonight. And hopefully this works. I think this works. Hey, look at that. Okay, let's get the book in there. See, and we got the book twice through the magic of television. You have a book, and we made a little P book right next to your name. See, like
so
real,
cool.
it's like
I
real
love it.
TV, but
So,
without the budget, with no budget.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry. How are you?
Great.
How
Doing well.
Yeah, so you're across the pond there. We're in Chi-Town, and you're in Cleveland. Where did you say you're at?
Coventry.
Oh, Coventry. Yeah, that's next to Buffalo, right? No, I'm lying to people again. They'll never let me back on TV. No, okay, so she's in the UK. So, for those of you who are globally challenged. And you're an author, right?
Yeah.
And you have this book about classic rock and true crime. It's kind of like a Reese's peanut butter cup of deliciousness. You wanna tell us? Well, first, before we get into that, let's let the people salivate for a moment on that little tidbit. But let's talk about you for just a second, and a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to do the book.
So yes, my name is Angie Moon, and I'm originally from Chicago, but I've moved all over the place. So I've lived in Chicago, I've lived in Dallas, I've lived in a suburb of Dallas, I've lived in Florida, I've lived in Canada, I moved to Evanston. I moved then to Ireland. So I lived in Limerick and Killarney, and now I'm in England. So I have done a lot of country hopping. I feel almost like Carmen Sandiego. And upstairs, I do have a jacket that looks a lot like Carmen Sandiego's. And it's a very 60s style jacket. It's really cool with a 50s silhouette. And I've been writing about classic rock for a decade now. So in March, it'll be 10 years of my blog, The Diversity of Classic Rock. And it also in March is the 1-year anniversary of Crime of the Century, Classic Rock, and True Crime. A book of 2 of my biggest interests, and these are all true stories. So I got into classic rock and true crime. Well, I got into true crime before I got into classic rock, believe it or not, even though I've done way more stuff on classic rock. I've been into true crime since I was 8 or 9 years old, and my dad got me into true crime. And every weekend growing up, we would watch true crime documentaries. So Dateline, 2020, 48 Hours, the like. When Investigation Discovery became a thing when I was a teenager, that was something that I was just really excited about, and I would be binge watching that every summer. And then I got into classic rock when I was 14 years old, starting with the Beatles and then moving on to all the other 60s groups and then going into the 70s. And then now I'm just like, I love everything from the 50s to the 80s. I really just love it all. I just love classic rock. That is like my whole life.
I do too. I grew up with I kind of into the sort of the meat of the modern classic rock, if you will, like in the 70s, like 60s, 70s, 80s, a little bit of the 90s, and then got into I got into it as a DJ because where I grew up on the Gulf Coast, we were too far away to pick up WRNO out of New Orleans, which was the classic rock. Well, it was the rock station then, but they played a lot of classic rock and they played new rock too. But so I had to get a lot of my rock learnings initially from top 40 stations, which, of course, rock music is few and far between on these top 40 stations.
Nowadays it's just extinct.
Right.
If we're being honest.
There was some crossover back in the day, but yeah, as time went on, that totally just, totally separated. So, but what is your flavor of classic rock that you like? When they say, "Hey, are you into classic rock?" You say, "Yeah, I'm into," and you say
British
what?
60s. Like British 60s music is like my number one love. Anything British from the 60s, that is my number one love. Absolutely. So Beatles, The Who, The Rolling Stones, The Kinks, all that stuff.
The
Yeah, the Small
Ruddles.
Faces, The Pretty Things.
Do
Yeah.
you like the Ruddles? Have you heard of the Ruddles?
Yeah, I
The,
like them. Yeah, I like the mockumentary. That was really good.
yeah, I think when This Is Spinal Tap came along years later, I think it was a nice homage to the Ruddles because of you know just and having the rock elements. Have you ever seen This Is Spinal Tap?
Yes, yes. Long
Yeah.
time ago, but yeah, I think it was really cool. I'm actually in secondary school. I was class of 2011, and I was the youngest in my graduating class. I graduated when I was 16 years old. And yeah, it was kind of like we were the Nigel Tufnell graduating class. These go up to 11.
Nice. Ah, this class goes up to 11. Well, why don't you just make 10 smarter? Well, it goes to 11. It just that dry humor, that Christopher Guest touch to it. I was a big fan of all his movies anyway, with the dry humor. Just, oh, so good. But Spinal Tap, oh my God, it's been years since I've seen it myself, and it's always it's like every 10 years or so, it's one of those things where it's just like, man, I'm in the mood for some Spinal Tap and I got to put it on.
I think
But
lately my favorite classic rock movie has been Velvet Goldmine. That's really good. Well, it's kind of a David Bowie movie, but not really, because David Bowie didn't approve of having a biopic made. So, that they made a fictional character out of that with Brian Slade, and I just think it's just so fascinating, just this whole you know, I think going from one queer generation to the next, and this, this kind of brooch being passed on from generation to generation. I think that's just such a beautiful thing. And that's, I'm just really fascinated with LGBT history. A lot of my best known work on my blog is about LGBT classic rock history. So I talk about LGBT classic rockers. I talk about LGBT themed songs. I've talked about like classic rockers who've cross-dressed. I talk about androgyny in rock and roll, all those sorts of topics. I find that really fascinating.
yeah, it's facets of rock and roll that really didn't get explored back in the day because the environment really didn't, give
I
it
mean, there's
enough
little
of.
hints of it here and there,
Yeah,
like,
little rumors and stuff. I mean, Elton John was probably one of the biggest ones back then too. But there wasn't that openness like you have today, which is very
oh
sad.
no. I think if they were all millennials, I think so many more of them would have come out as bisexual. I definitely have that feeling. If they were millennials or Gen Z, definitely.
So now let's talk about the book itself, Crime of the Century, which is available at many places, right?
Oh yeah.
Where can you get it?
So the best place to buy it, of course, is my website, and you can buy it directly through me. You're paying pretty much the same. Like if you're within the UK, you're paying pretty much the same with me. So you might as well just buy through me because I get all the money. Meanwhile, if you buy through Amazon, I hardly get anything, and it takes forever for me to get paid. So yeah, definitely buying through me. You can also pay whatever you can for the ebook. So if you go on Patreon or PayPal, you can just donate anything you'd like to me, and I will send you a copy of the ebook. You can also get the book signed by my cat, Bowie. Bowie was on my lap, but now she's just gone over there and is loafing in the corner.
This is Bowie right here, right?
Yeah, that's her.
Oh, look at the posing. That cat knew that she was getting her picture taken.
She's a model. Like she's a legit model. I love her.
Very smart. I love smart animals. The dumb ones, they amuse me, but it only works for so long. But the smart ones like that, those are great. So they can get them in all these places. Now this is I like this. I like the color there. Crime of the Century, classic rock and true crime. So let's talk about this book. What inspired you to do the book?
So basically, I have been into true crime and rock and roll for a very long time. So classic rock I've been into for half my life, and then true crime I've been into for over 2/3 of my life, but I never really talked much about my interest in true crime. And during the lockdown, so this was basically a lockdown project because I started it in 2021 and Ireland was very strict with lockdowns. So, I needed something to keep me occupied and keep me from going insane. And I was chronically ill at the time. So that's what I did. I just wrote this book. And one of the bands that I really got into during lockdown were the Kinks. And I am just fascinated with their music. I got into their music thanks to the movie The Boat That Rocked, or in America it's called Pirate Radio. And in the intro of the movie, they have All Day and All of the Night playing. And that song is actually plays in the movie A Complete Unknown, the new Bob Dylan biopic starring Timothée Chalamet. And that's pretty cool just to show how things went electric in the 60s. And then it wasn't the first fuzz guitar song, far from it. It's still a very important one, but yeah. But anyway, I've read all sorts of things about the Kinks. I've pretty much read everything about the Kinks. And one thing that fascinated me is that they didn't just have one true crime connection, they had two true crime connections.
Really?
So the first one was John Wayne Gacy. And they were on tour in the United States. And this was their 1965 tour. And this was the notorious one that got them banned from America for 4 years. I'm not joking. And it could have been worse had they decided to stay the night at a certain someone's house. Possibly. Who knows? So the Kinks went, around the East Coast. Then they went to Illinois. And in Illinois, what famous serial killer was from there? John Wayne Gacy.
Yeah.
And at a show in Springfield, John Wayne Gacy was a promoter for the show because it was the JCs organizing the show, and they had the Kinks play at the Springfield Armory.
Right.
And, John Wayne Gacy, naturally, he met the Kinks. And I think on the way to Springfield, Ray Davis was in the car with someone who was waving a gun around and talking about how he had Elvis on speed dial or something like that. And just said crazy things like, the Kinks, what kind of band name is that? And so the Kinks played in Springfield, and the narrative kind of diverts from there because different members of the band have different sides of the different stories to tell. So some people say that, John Wayne Gacy, some of them say that John Wayne Gacy did talk to them. Others say that they went to John Wayne Gacy's house. Others say that they couldn't have gone to John Wayne Gacy's house because they had to go to Colorado as their next tour date, and they had to drive a long way. And America's a very big country, it's like the size of Europe. Yeah. And that's insane to me, just thinking about that, just how spread out everything is. I don't think I can ever go back to that.
I think
I digress.
Texas is bigger than France, I think. Just Texas.
I believe it, yeah.
Yeah, it's huge.
But anyway, yeah. But at the time, John Wayne Gacy was just a shoe salesman, and he was just a VP of the JCs in Springfield. So he hadn't committed any murders yet. But we do know that his type was young twinks, basically. And the Kinks were, they had that look. They had the look of young twinks, especially their youngest member, Dave Davis, who was only 18 years old when he toured the US for the first time. And he was 17 years old when he played that fuzz guitar on You Really Got Me and All Day and All of the Night. But anyway, that was the first true crime connection. The next one is back home in England with the Kray twins. Now, in case any Americans don't know who the Kray twins are, they were basically Britain's most notorious gangsters. These guys were from the East End. They were formerly boxers. Then they were conscripted into the military for a bit. And then they were just troublemakers. And they killed people in the 60s. There was a big trial in the late 60s. And they rubbed shoulders with a lot of entertainers. They wanted to be celebrities themselves, even though the mafia kept telling them, because they visited America once, and the Italian mafia were like, do not become celebrities. Don't do your own dirty work. But no, they decided to ignore that because they had a lot of, hubris, I guess, a lot of arrogance. And they, posed for David Bailey. And there's that one iconic photo of them just posing, and one of them's behind the other, and they're just leaning and looking all intimidating. And they would rub shoulders with a lot of celebrities. So there's not just stories of them crossing paths with the Kinks, which they wanted Ray and Dave Davis to play them in a biopic about them. And one of their original plans was to have Roger Daltrey produce the biopic.
Oh, wow.
But then Roger Daltrey got out of it. But in the end, they had another set of classic rock brothers play them in the biopic. Martin and Gary Kemp from Spandau Ballet.
What? Spandau Ballet? Come on.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Bella in the chat says Ray Davies pulled the plug on Yes when they were opening for the Kinks.
Typical of him. He is just his banter is just so funny. I find him hilarious.
Are was he just an asshole? Is that what it was? I mean, why would he do something like that? Was he very combative with other bands or?
I mean, there was a lot of banter. I think the funniest thing about Ray Davis, I think my favorite quote of his is, "I'd rather have a great ass than be an asshole." And I'm like, what the hell is that? When he said he had the greatest ass in show business, I still think that's so funny.
Well, both can be true at the same time. Does the man not know physics? Wait a minute. So wow, that's pretty cool. So
and then there's a lot of coincidences with him and Brian Wilson, the frontman, main songwriter, and everything of the Beach Boys, the genius behind that band. So what's crazy is they both almost have the same birthday. Their birthdays are just a day apart. One's June 20th, one's June 21st. Ray Davis is June 21st. Brian Wilson's June 20th. Now, 2 years apart. So Brian Wilson was 1942. Ray Davis was 1944. And that was all right around, summer solstice. And let's see. So they were both in sibling groups. They were both the main, songwriter. They were both the lead, pretty much lead singers. They did a lot of lead vocals and stuff like that. And they had the same middle name, Douglas. They both had mental health issues. They both had just daughters. Yeah, there's some weird coincidences with them. And I actually have a blog post all about it on my blog where I just talk about the weird coincidences. And it reminds me of that whole poster with Lincoln versus Kennedy. And I do actually talk about Kennedy in this book, speaking of, presidential assassination. So I talk about not just Kennedy, but Ford and Reagan. So all these 20th century presidential assassinations or assassination attempts, because two of them were attempts,
right.
They're all connected to classic rock somehow. And it's actually insane.
That's why we never should have legalized it in the first place. Otherwise, we'd have peace and harmony in the land instead of that trash music the young kids are listening to. That's what the parents would say.
Yeah, the crazy coincidence is the Beach Boys had their own true crime connection, and that was to Charles Manson. And apparently there is another one for the Beach Boys, but I'm going to be saving that for another volume. So there's some fascinating stories there.
Tease. No, that's fine. So yeah, I was gonna say Manson because he was I'm not making comparisons to Hitler. I'm just making comparisons to the situations. So a lot of people say if they would have told Hitler his artwork looked good, then maybe we wouldn't have had World War II. Because he was turned out to be a shit painter then, and then he went on to that. Obviously that's not how that works.
Yeah,
but if
there's a funny story.
have you ever heard any of Charles Manson's actual music? He has there's
a funny story about that, and that all was in it was in my master's program in Ireland. So I was studying in University of Limerick journalism, and I did radio there. So I had my own classic rock radio show called Crazy on Classic Rock, just like my website's domain name. And one day, one of my friends decided to ask me to guest on his talk show on the radio station. So I was like, okay, cool, I'm going to join. So this was my late friend Killian, and he and I were just talking, and then we had a music break, and he played this really nice sounding 60s folk song. And then we came back on the air, and he said, Angie, what do you think of the song? And I was like, yeah, it's a pretty nice song. I like it. And he's like, that's by Charles Manson. And I was just sitting there mouth agape because I knew who Charles Manson was. I knew who he was. I knew about the, Tate LaBianca murders, but I had no idea that he tried to become a musician. And then, I kept that idea in my back pocket, like, this information might come in handy sometime in the future. And years later, I decided to write a book about it. And I was like, okay, the Kinks, the Beach Boys, what other stories? So I knew about Joe Meek. I knew about Phil Spector. And then I just kept researching and finding more and more. So I ended up reading Roger Daltrey's autobiography, found out about his connection to the Cray twins. And not only were they going to hire him to be the producer of their biopic, Roger Daltrey got a loan from the Cray twins in the 60s. Thankfully, he paid it back.
Yeah.
So he crashed the car somewhere on Salisbury Plain, and then he couldn't afford to get the repairs, and no one would loan him money except for the Cray twins.
Right. And Cray twins were a bad gang in England, right?
Oh, yeah. They were, vicious.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is they were, an example of gay villains. And there's quite a few, there's other gay villains. Obviously, John Wayne Gacy's the other gay villain. So, it's interesting that the Kinks had encounters with a few gay villains, and then there's a couple bisexual members in the Kinks. So Ray and Dave Davis both are bisexual, and interestingly enough, Ray came out before Dave did by a few decades. Kind of crazy to think about. Yeah, because a lot of people expect it was just Dave, and it's like, no, it's actually Ray as well, because in the 60s, he said in an interview regarding the song See My Friends, which is this kind of raga rock inspired song, and he said one day to his wife, you know what, if it wasn't for you, I'd be queer. And if that's not a, confession like I'm bisexual, I don't know what is. And then he said it again when he did an interview with a few of people from Andy Warhol's factory. So there was Candy Darling, and he did an interview with her, and he asked them, okay, ask me if I like men. And they said, do you like men? And he's like, mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's usually when they say that's usually a telltale. I don't know. I've
alluded to it, multiple times in concerts in like the 70s or something.
Well, yeah, like you said, we were talking about this before the show. There was a lot of kind of that kind of thing going on, but not so much out in the open. And where it is today, it's just a lot more open environment for people to be themselves, which I felt sorry for a lot of those rockers back then, because you kind of knew that they were going through something that's like, but they couldn't be who they wanted to be, and it was just, some of them said, well,
I think there's something tragic in the book about that, connected to that. So something that like I wish that people would understand is that gay liberation and civil rights happened on the same timeline. Like you can name just events on each side that happened right around the same time.
Yeah.
And, in 1967, the same year as Loving v. Virginia, homosexuality was finally decriminalized in England and Wales. And earlier, but sadly, producer Joe Meek, who was basically Britain's Phil Spector, he never lived to see that progress. He was a gay man living in, the 50s and early 60s, and he was arrested for being gay in the early 60s. And then he never got royalties from Telstar, his big hit, which was the first British invasion #1 in America, predating the Beatles by a good bit, because this was 1962. So he never got royalties from that. It made him go crazy. He was fearing blackmailing from the Cray twins. There's also like a whole story about the Cray twins and Brian Epstein, who killed himself in 1967. And he was arrested for being gay the decade before. But like, what's interesting is like in the mid 20th being arrested for being gay wasn't really a death sentence like it was, 60-70 years before that.
Right. Yeah.
And another connection to the Beatles, the guy who played Paul's grandfather, Wilford Brambell, he was gay, and he was half Irish, half Jewish.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. And a lot of people didn't know this at the time, obviously, right? I mean, just the people in the know knew, but not like the general public, right?
Yeah, I mean, and when I think about it, like I read Dave Davis's autobiography, and he talked about his gay affairs in 1964. That was before it was legal. Had Dave Davis been caught, this would have been a disaster for the Kinks. Thankfully, he knew the right places to go. He knew the right hotels to take his dates to. So they were cool with him. So there weren't any problems for him, thankfully. And nobody actually knew, even though the Kinks were, quite, in touch with their feminine side. I mean, there were definitely people who were much more open about their sexuality than the Kinks. Like Phil May of the Pretty Things, he was pretty openly bi. People knew it, and he actually changed. He would change pronouns mid-song to sing about how he loved men and loved women.
Oh, in baseball they call that a switch hitter. Yeah, so it just like switch to one side, and then the other side. I know, just to fuck with people, and I think that's beautiful. The way artists would do that. Jacqueline in the chat, what's up, Jacqueline? Said she got a question. Said, didn't the Crays grow up in Whitechapel, same place that Jack the Ripper committed his crimes? Was it Whitechapel?
Yeah.
What is it about Whitechapel then? Do you think there's some sort of deep rooted evil in that area that makes people?
They were tried at the Old Bailey, which is the same court as the first celebrity trial.
Wait, how many Crays were there?
So there was Reggie, Ronnie, and then they had an older brother, or was it an older brother? Charlie Cray. Charlie Cray was their brother,
So
but he wasn't in jail for life.
So when one of the brothers died, were the others cray cray? See, I did that with a thing. I'm sorry. I'll put it out. I didn't mean to. Come on, that was a little bit funny, right? You gave me a sympathy chuckle. I'll take that. Okay, so we got to talk more about the spookies and all the creepies in the book. So, without giving too much away, because you want people to get this book, are there is there like a chain of connections between like artists and groups, or is there like one particular chain that you can kind of touch upon a little bit?
I definitely think that the one about Charles Manson, because I think half the chapters in the first section, which is about musicians encountering murderers, half of them are not half, but like a lot of them are about Charles Manson and the Manson family. And their connections to classic rock run way deeper than the Beach Boys. It's more than just that. And it wasn't just Charles Manson interacting with them. You know, Squeaky Fromme tried to get in contact with Jimmy Page while they were on tour, while Led Zeppelin were on tour in the US in the 70s. Yeah. And this was right before Ford was assassinated. Or not assassinated, but assassination attempt. Whoa. So she tried to kill Ford, but then the gun wouldn't go off. And what's interesting about Ford is that both people who tried to kill him were women. And that's the only time that women tried to kill the president. Another one would be Bobby Beausoleil. Bobby Beausoleil had quite a few music connections. I mean, he was in Arthur Lee's band before they were famous, but it wasn't for very long. He tried to be in Frank Zappa's band, but that didn't work out either. And then he ended up making music for Kenneth Anger after Jimmy Page and him had cut ties because they just had a falling out. So he made music for Kenneth Anger film.
Right on. I'm fascinated because, you know, there's that whole, you know, everybody talks about the Hollywood, like Illuminati and stuff. And there's kind of an Illuminati for the music industry as well. That kind of bleeds over into the other.
But I think what's an interesting chain, because now that I think of it, if you look at my book cover, there are a lot of Easter eggs on it. So let's get started. What does this look like? A tarot card. Now, the tarot card is a reference to Joe Meek. Okay. And I tell this story at every book fair, every book event. I talk about this, and I'm probably going to do it at my next book event next month because it's right near the anniversary of the day the music died. So let's get into it. So January 1958, Joe Meek goes to a tarot card reading with a friend. And this fortune teller friend draws 3 tarot cards. And he writes down what comes to mind. One of them he writes Buddy Holly. Next one he writes dies. Next one, February 3rd. So February 3rd, 1958 comes and goes. And, you know, Buddy Holly's alive. March 1958, Buddy Holly tours the UK. Now, believe it or not, Buddy Holly has played in more countries than Elvis Presley, even though he had lived such a short life. So let's get into it now. All right. So Joe Meek goes to one of Buddy Holly's concerts and warns Buddy Holly about February 3rd because he believed something is going to happen February 3rd. And Buddy Holly was just like, okay, thank you for your concern. Bye-bye. You know, move along. Okay. February 3rd, 1959. The day the music died. After playing at the Surf Ballroom, coin toss. Buddy Holly, the Big Bopper, and Richie Valens all get on the plane. Plane crashes in the wee hours, February 3rd, 1959. Now, February 3rd, here's some weird connections with January 1958 and February 3rd. So January 1958, the Gibson Flying V was patented. February 3rd, whose birthday was on February 3rd? Dave Davis of the Kinks. Who popularized the Flying V? Dave Davis of the Kinks. Because he played it on Shindig in 1965.
What?
And that guitar was, you know, just something that he came across by happenstance because he was borrowing George Harrison's guitar. It was a Gretsch guitar. And then that got lost on the plane. And he needed to find a new guitar in time for, a TV taping. And they took him to a guitar store. He saw a guitar in this triangular shaped case. And he was like, I want to look at it. And the salesman was like, you don't want that. That's just a musty old thing. And he's like, no, let me see it. He pulls it out and he's like, this is perfect. The Flying V was just a nothing guitar in 1958 because it was just so futuristic looking and it just looked so weird. So it's crazy that when you think about it, Buddy Holly could have played one of those, but he didn't.
Mm. Yeah, that whole thing with the plane crash is just, that's probably the spookiest.
And then here it gets even crazier. February 3rd, 1967, Joe Meek kills his landlady before turning the gun on himself. February 3rd, his American counterpart, Phil Spector, February 3rd, 2003, murders Lana Clarkson.
What is it
Just so
about?
many similarities between Spector and Meek. It's insane.
And February 3rd, too, right?
February 3rd. It's a crazy date. Like, what the heck? I better watch out that day.
I know, right? Well, it's less than a month away, so you better get your shopping done early before then. So you said there's Easter eggs on the thing. What else is an Easter egg, or do you want to not divulge it? You want people to find it out?
That's it. That's all. Just the Flying V being there, the tarot card, the numerology. When you do your research, it's really crazy. I just love numerology.
What about this blood splatter here?
So yeah, I mean, the Flying V just looks like a weapon, and I came up with this idea to have a bloody Flying V on the book cover because, like, that looks like a weapon. Very Lizzie Borden does rock and roll, and yeah, I originally wanted to make this book look like an Irish gravestone, but I couldn't find good enough, imagery to use for an Irish gravestone because I wrote this book while I was in Ireland. I wanted to have some Irish sort of connection, but that didn't end up working out. But the tarot card, I think, turned out really, really nice, and I love just telling that story of Joe Meek and Phil Spector, and then Dave Davis somehow just being popped in there. Yeah.
Well, you know what? Don't count out Lizzie Borden. I saw her live at the Civic Center back in '74, man, and she just fucking, she just burned it up, man. They opened for Santana, and it was awesome. No, that didn't happen. In my head, yes, but in reality, no. I like books like this. My middle sister, she's the big true crime person, and she'll tell me some of these tales about how people do these things. Do you think there's a mentality with rockers to think that, like, some of them are on these journeys to meet these kinds of people along the way to somehow influence their life, positive or negative?
I think there's always been shady people in the entertainment industry. And I think with a lot of, young people, they have a lot of, moxie, they have a lot of nerve, and they think that they're immune, they think they're invincible, they don't think they're ever going to get into trouble. And I think fame can get to people's heads. And I think something that I do think about a lot, and the type of true crime that fascinates me the most is celebrity true crime, anything involving a celebrity, because it's got that star power. It's got that whole, what would make them do that? Why would they had everything. Why would they go off and commit a crime? And just that kind of rise and fall, that Greek tragedy, that story arc just fascinates me. So, like, I hope to dive more into that with the next book, which will be about celebrity trials and the history of them. Well, the first 100 years of them, anyway.
I know you're mostly into classic rock, but what do you have an opinion on what's going on now with the diddler, right? With modern musicians and the scandals that's going on with them. What do you think's going on?
I think that's just insane.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's just crazy. And I'm wondering if he's going to make it to trial alive. That's what I wonder. Or is someone going to try to off him because he's going to have dirt on so many people. There's just going to be so many people that are going to be like, now there's Jay-Z, and now people are like Beyonce. Maybe there's something with Beyonce. People are speculating that.
Yeah. My buddy Franco was doing some videos about them too. And all their connections with a lot of these corporate big money corporate people too,
Honestly, you could write a whole hip hop and true crime book. If I knew more about hip hop, I would have written that, but I don't know much about hip hop. I don't really listen to it much. My brother does. If my brother had some writing skills, I'd probably ask him to collaborate with me on it, but I don't think he's much of a writer.
Well, anybody around these parts to tell you that I am the utmost hip hop expert. I'm more hip replacement, actually, to be honest. But no, I'm not a hip hop person either. But I find the stories fascinating behind, like Suge Knight holding Ice Cube. No, what's his name? Vanilla Ice by his ankles over a building and like stuff, crazy shit like that, you know. And it's like, that's
Yeah.
not new stuff. That's been going on for decades, like crazy shit.
Makes me think of like Don Arden when the Small Faces tried to get a new manager and then they tried to threaten someone, and then Steve Marriott got screwed over again by the mafia because his other manager, D'Anthony, had mafia connections. And then when he complained, he was like, "I'm going to bring you into the room full of the mafia guys." And he was, you know, a 5'4", tiny little guy. He was just running out of there afraid. He was like, "I'm going to die. I can't say anything anymore."
Right.
But yeah, I think one thing that, like, one of the chapters that I found, like, I was worried about writing because I'm not really a big fan of them, are the Sex Pistols. So I write about Sid Vicious. But actually, I ended up finding that chapter really interesting to write about because I decided to look at the victim, Nancy Spungen. And I wanted to go more into her life and really humanize her, because a lot of people dehumanize her. They just, you know, write her off as some sort of bimbo and some groupie and really dumb, when the reality is she was really smart, and her drug addiction was something that she was just destined to have because of her birth circumstances. She was born being strangled by her umbilical cord, and she would cry a lot, and, you know, they'd give her drugs to pacify her. And naturally that would give her a dependency. And it's just sad how people dehumanize drug addicts. And, you know, people would portray her parents as not being supportive when really they tried to support her. They sent her to England because that was her dream. She wanted to go to London. She wanted to, you know, meet all these rock stars. She really wanted to be a music journalist, but that never ended up working out for one reason or another. And yeah, I think Nancy Spungen was just such an interesting person. And in some ways, I see a bit of myself in her. You know, she was a Jewish woman. She graduated early from secondary school. You know, she had fears that she would die young. Well, I'm somehow still here. I definitely had those fears when I was younger. I was just like, I don't know if I want to make it past 18, you know? And, you know, it's definitely stuff that it was really sad, but I think I approached it more like, this is a story and I'm telling a story about people. And, you know, one thing that I really like, and my dad really likes these kinds of movies too, is based on true story movies. And think about it this way. In 2023, you know, one of the biggest movies was Oppenheimer. Now, how many of you guys who've watched Oppenheimer are scientists, or more specifically, physicists? Probably barely any of you guys, right? Well, I think why people wanted to watch Oppenheimer is because, yeah, there's no science really in it. It's just stories about people. And that's really what this book is about. So I think you can enjoy it even if you aren't very into classic rock or very into true crime. Maybe you will be converted thanks to this book. And speaking of Oppenheimer, there is a really weird coincidence with, or connection with, my family. So my grandfather's uncle actually knew Oppenheimer. He knew a lot of the people that were portrayed in that film. So he knew Bohr, he knew Robbie, he knew Einstein as well.
Oh, wow.
And he was a president of a science university in Israel.
Oh, cool, cool. Did he work on the Manhattan Project?
Oh, no. My grandpa's uncle wasn't a scientist. He was a fundraiser. And he had friends in all.
Did he work on the?
No. Nobody in my family had anything to do with that. Thank goodness.
I know. I find that time fascinating, and just like the fact that what they created, I don't think they really understood what they had created until they saw just the sun just appear out of nowhere, and there we go. There be, you know, the next generation of fear mongering and whatnot, you know, as we drop two of those bastards on Japan. In the US, we could say we did that, baby. That was us. We dropped bombs. We're the only ones to do it so far. You know, I've grown, as I've grown older, I've found that there's been more access to more accurate history nowadays than we've had in the past, you know, because I grew up in the days with like Compton's Encyclopedia, and you had the library, and, you know, the little microfiche, you know, the microfiche, you do the little, you see on the 70s movies, you're like, we got to go see what this person did. And they go in there and they check the old, you know.
That's something that I'm going to end up having to look at probably. I'll have to find a way to get the microfiche from the library, because the next project I'm working on, it's going to be involving stuff that's dating back to 1895, a lot of early 20th century stuff. This is stuff that's like beyond and before classic rock. A little Yes reference in there for you guys.
Oh, I see what you did there. And I'm not Stevie Wonder, see? So, you see, because that's another reference, because he's Anyway, you want to talk about like the next? I know you got this book out, but you want to kind
Yeah.
of tease the next one a little
So
bit?
yeah, I was trying to think, what am I going to do next? So I was like, okay, what am I going to do? All right. So I've got Crime of the Century. I was thinking naturally, why don't we do Crime of the Century too? But I was thinking with, all these crazy trials that are coming up, obviously with the Diddy trial, with Luigi Mangione as well, and the whole media circus around that, even though he's not a celebrity, I thought, I haven't really seen people go really in depth into celebrity trials and compiling all these stories and going through the whole history. Now obviously the history isn't really from 1895, 130 years. There we go, 130 years. So that's another reason, is 130-year anniversary of the first celebrity trial, or the first modern age celebrity trial. So we go from Oscar Wilde to OJ Simpson in this. So it's a fascinating story, and I was just stunned at how many people didn't know what the first celebrity trial was. And I was like, wait, I thought this was common knowledge, but I guess I took it for granted because I lived in Ireland for nearly a decade, so everyone would know that. But yeah, it's like, wait, people don't know this in America? I better share this. And I think with the attacks on gay rights, and then obviously we have some obscenity trials in there too. So a bit of Lenny Bruce, we got Mae West, we have James Joyce. We're going to be talking about that as well. So, and with all these things being censored, with social media being censored, big tech, stopping people from saying things, Project 2025 trying to ban, adult content. I think now is the right time. And perhaps, being gay might be outlawed. I'm worried about that. I don't think it's going to happen, but it does worry me. And I'm like, okay, this is the time to talk about these things and these real issues and talk about how that's changed in just 100 years. Now, obviously with OJ Simpson, that's where we end. There wasn't social media yet. So that really changed things. So it's going to be interesting seeing these social media celebrity trials and how the whole Diddy stuff is going to unfold.
Mm-hmm.
That's really like what I'm curious about seeing, but I think I need to take a step back from that. And there's just so many trials I got to cover. There's got to be like at least 25 of them that I have to talk about. And there is going to be a little classic rock in there. So I'm not completely abandoning classic rock. There is going to be a little bit of it in there. So there's going to be Jim Morrison. There's going to be the Rolling Stones. I'm trying to think, Jimi Hendrix as well will be in there as well. So yeah.
Yeah, you got to have a little crossover appeal for the other products. See, it's all about branding, baby. You know what I'm saying? We're trying to push these books, baby. Come on, people. Come on, you cheap bastards out there. You know who you are. So I like that idea too, and I think that is kind of a novel idea. See how I did that? Because these kind of things, these celebrity trials of late, I mean, you've had some in the 80s and 70s, but now you just have like almost whole channels full of these things, thanks to
the first big one of the social media age would have been Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. But in this book, what I really want to focus on is celebrities who are facing jail time. That's really what I want to focus on, because that is like, in some cases, they never bounced back. Their lives were never the same again. And I think one of the heartbreaking ones for me is Fatty Arbuckle. That one just makes me so sad. So he was a silent film star. He's the one who made Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin famous. He was a big influence on them, and he was framed for murder. And, I see some parallels between that and Little Willie John, and they were just never able to completely bounce back from that. And then, Fatty Arbuckle being, the size he was, I mean, implying the nickname there, he died at 46.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's going to be some numerology. There's some numerology in there somewhere. So I'll be getting into that. That's going to be insane.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm into I'm curious about numerology.
Because I think with Fatty Arbuckle, let me look this up, because I think there were 3 trials of Fatty Arbuckle. Was it 3 trials? Was he tried 3 times? How many trials were there? Yeah, there were 3 trials for Fatty Arbuckle. Similarly, there were 3 trials for Oscar Wilde. They both died at 46. Something suspicious is happening.
Yeah, I do believe in synchronicity like that. I really do. And particularly like in the music business, which is kind of appropriate because music, like we were talking about earlier, has this resonance with people, right? And so just the music business itself resonates with people. The allure, the history behind it, the legends involved in music history, and all the crime and all the stuff that's swept under, all the little dirty secrets that are swept under the rug. Uh, you know, it's about as bad as Hollywood itself, probably a little worse, uh, because there's more. I would think there's more things happening in rock and in music in general like that. You know,
Yeah,
especially
like
when money's involved.
when I was a kid, I wanted to be an actor. I remember when I was 10 years old, my people around me were like, yo, you could be an actor. And I really wanted that. And I'm glad I didn't live in like LA where I could have maybe made that happen. I was from Chicago, I was living there. And, I'm glad that I never became an actor because I think I couldn't handle it. I ended up,
Yeah.
in my late teens with an eating disorder, and I was underweight for a few years. And I think if I had been famous, I would be just destroyed even more. I don't know if I would have lived.
Yeah, I tend to have an addictive personality. So if I had been maneuvered into areas where I was taking substances I had no business taking or doing things I had no business doing, I could have possibly, through the dopamine you get through success, if you are successful, right? But fortunately, I am a talentless asshole. And when I went to LA, I did not become famous at all. Maybe infamous for a few reasons that the LA County Sheriff's Department says I probably shouldn't talk about without my lawyer present. But the point is that I'm glad I never became famous, because you see you saw the seedy underbelly anyway of the entertainment industry in general. And now you're starting to see more and more of these stories coming out, more and more people becoming brave enough to come out and tell these stories now that some of these scumbags are starting to go to jail who's been perpetrating a lot of these crimes too.
And
So
it ruins your childhood. I know the most ruined childhoods were those child stars. But like when you think about
yeah,
it, it doesn't sit right with me to watch a lot of those old Nickelodeon shows or those old Disney Channel shows because there was just so much pain. And I think this all makes me think of going back to classic rock. There's a Kinks song called Celluloid Heroes, and it just talks about all these old Hollywood stars that were just chewed up and spit out and thrown out like yesterday's rubbish.
mm-hmm.
And it just makes me so sad, Success walks hand in hand with failure along Hollywood Boulevard.
Yeah.
Celluloid heroes never really die.
I think souls like us are probably like somewhere along the way the hands of fate kind of say, you know what, don't go there, don't go there, maybe go over here instead. That's the way I look at it, because I'd always, as a child, I'd always wanted to go to Hollywood. And then, you hear the stories about like old Hollywood, like the Black Dahlia, that's probably one of the more famous ones for celebrities. But, in the music industry, you don't hear a lot of them until some of these old OGs pop up and say, yeah, I remember I used to party with so-and-so. Like we said, talking about Manson and being kind of in the mix with like the Beach Boys. And who else was he involved with?
So yeah, Neil Young met Charles Manson, Jackson Brown, the Mamas and the Papas, so Mama Cass and John Phillips, and then Phil Oakes, and then Ed Sanders, his friend.
Okay. I do have a Jackson Brown connection because back in the mid-aughts, I was dating a young lady whose mom was good friends with Jackson Brown for several years. I think she was probably Illuminati. I want to say that, so because I just want to say, hey, I'm cool.
And then I interviewed a musician, and I got a story for my book. So I interviewed Tony Valentino of the Standells a couple years ago for my just for my blog, and then he ended up just dropping that he was friends with Dennis Wilson and he went to Spawn Ranch, and I just sat there like, what? Tell me more. I need to know. What the heck is this?
Right.
And then he happened to be born the same day as Bob Dylan, same exact day.
You talk about numerology, and I think like that, and the stars aligning like that, kind of literally. What do you think?
I went from having a Kinks phase. Now my obsession now is a Soviet rock band called Kino, and their frontman Victor Soy. Guess what? He was born June 21st, just like Ray Davis, but in 1962. There's some weird coincidence. And then who else was born on June 21st? Lana Del Rey, who I argue is the most classic rock of any mainstream musician today.
Okay. I mean, how do you think all that? Why does all that fit together? Do you think it's like an actual fate thing? Do you think it's like some engineering from space astronauts from way back? What do you think it is?
What if it's aliens?
What if
I mean,
it's
Dave Davis
ancient
did say something
aliens?
about aliens.
Wait a minute.
He said
What if it's
something about
ancient aliens and at a certain point in human evolution, our DNA unlocks at a certain point, and then boom, that's when it all happens, man. Right? No.
I mean, if I were stoned right now, I would probably be waffling on even more about this, and I'd be going on about Velvet Goldmine and aliens and stuff.
Well, luckily, I'm stoned enough for the both of us, so you know. I took precautions, lady. So should have you have. You should have prepared. Well, now you'll know for next time when you come on. If you come on, if you dare come back to these unholy realms.
I tried to keep it professional since I'm talking about my book, but maybe next time you'll see stoned me.
Well, yeah, we got we're pushing paper here, folks, so we got to keep it legit. But yeah, next time it's a goofy go nutty, okay? You know, so wear your favorite crazy face paint, you know, if you just want to just have a couple of freakouts, you know, man. You know, we're cool around here. We don't judge. Ain't nobody named Judy here, bro. You know what I'm saying? See, because Judge Judy. Okay, so we got a few minutes here. We gotta let's pimp the book one more time.
Yes. Coming back to Crime of the Century.
Where can you get this book again? You said.
So yeah, you can get it on my website. So I have links to buy it on Stripe. Now, if you're in the EU, you have to look for an EU-based distributor. I got them all listed underneath here. So it's available on Amazon as well if you can't afford the high shipping cost from the UK. Sometimes I do go back to the US, so I will announce that on my social media. And yeah, you might be able to get a little discount and pay just what UK people pay. So that's pretty awesome. But yeah.
And the audiobook is voiced by Ned Beatty.
So I might be able to send some copies from there to the EU maybe. So in case anybody is interested, I could maybe do that if I go to Ireland or my husband goes to Ireland.
I think we only got we got a Limey in the mix. Where's Anonymous? Where are you at? He's in the UK too, so he's local. But he can't read. He can't read. So, do you have a? I outed you and your melody. Is this an audiobook form yet, or is that
No. But I want to get back into radio. That's something I'd love to do, and I'd love to make a podcast format. I even have a playlist for the book. Like I have it on Spotify. I should have linked it, but yeah, it's really cool. I may put it on the buy page. You know what? I'm going to put it there at some point and just show you the playlist. Because my book comes with a playlist. It's got hundreds of songs, and it's not edited at all. I just throw whatever is associated with each chapter. So there's a bunch of different musicians. I even made a mock Coachella poster that I post on my Facebook page and on my Blue Sky, and it just shows all the bands that I talk about.
Okay, right on. Well, listen, if you get that link, let me know. I'll put it in the description later. Just put it in our Facebook secret code box there that we have. We got a secret code box. Ain't none of y'all privy to it. It's just me and her. All right, so y'all just back off, okay? So because we want people to get out and buy this book because it's fascinating. If you're into rock and roll and you're also into true crime, like I said, it's like a Reese's peanut butter cup of delicious intrigue and musical craziness. So, Crime of the Century.
Yes, it is for sale on bookshop.org. Yes, it is. So I just saw a comment there from Chuck's Intergalactic UFO Show. Yeah, if you use bookshop.org, that's definitely a lot better than using Amazon. So, and it's the same price pretty much. So that's pretty good.
Yes, all those links down below in the description too, by the way. So check it out, pick it up, get yourself a book, learn to read or some shit, and do yourself a favor and read this book. Let this be when you learn to read. Let this be the first book you read, so that you can be extra proud because you
make reading great again.
Make reading great again. Murga is what that is. Murga, make reading great again. Yes, Murga.
That almost sounds like murder. Oh my God.
Which is tied to crime, which is also tied to Crime of the Century. See the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon? You saw what you did there. That was your fault. You did everything. All I did was watch and approve. That's my job. All right, so you want to tell people how they can get a hold of you too, if or you're just like, no,
Yeah.
leave me the fuck
So
alone.
I'm on Instagram. My name is Angie Michelle Moon, and all of those are classic rock references. So Angie, Rolling Stones, Michelle, Beatles, and Moon, The Who. So the big three British invasion groups are represented in my name. And yeah, that's actually my name, Angie Michelle. That is my name that, I was born with. And yeah, I guess it was destined that I would be a classic rock obsessed nerd. And I'm also on Blue Sky as simply just Angie Moon. Yay for being an early adopter. And then I'm on Facebook, Angie Moon Classic Rock. So if you just put that all one word, Angie Moon Classic Rock, I'm also on Facebook. I don't have Twitter anymore. It's just awful for my mental health, so I'm not on there. I'm also not on TikTok, also a cesspit. Not good for my mental health. Trying to look after myself this year so I can keep writing more books. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to the next adventures and maybe more ExtraBulla. Maybe I appear on the show again. I'd love that. And yeah.
Yes, I've spoken to our board of directors, which is this rat that's over here eating a cheese sandwich, and he gave me a pause up for you to come back. So
Yay!
yeah, so because she's in the UK, so she's a good 6 hours ahead. Are you a morning person or are you an evening person? What do you like the best?
Night. I mean, I wrote the first 9,000 words of my book in the middle of the night while manic, and I was just writing the intro, and the first chapter I ended up writing was about the Kinks and John Wayne Gacy. So, yeah.
Because I was going to say, if we have you on the secret show on the weekend, that would be like 5 in the morning for you, and you're probably not down with that.
I can maybe do it. Yeah, we'll see.
I don't
It
know.
might just involve me going an all-nighter, but I can do that.
Well, it's you'll have to watch the show first, and then once your stomach is turned inside out and you get over that, you may want to reconsider saying you'll do it. So, but we have some weird shit on there, let's just say. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Like I said, a lot of times we find people in these spaces through other people. Like I said, I found you through our buddy Willie Bragg, who is awesome. I call him the Vulcan ambassador in this little space here, because he talks to everybody and he lives long and prospers because he's one of those cats. Any last thoughts you want to tell everybody about the world in general? What do you got, or you just want to get out of here?
I don't know. Just read The Diversity of Classic Rock, read Crime of the Century. Classic Rock is amazing. And yeah, I love my cat Bowie, and I love my husband Owen. I couldn't do this without Owen, and this book is dedicated to both Owen and my dad, because without them I don't think I could have written this.
Right on. Well, good luck with this one, and good luck with the next one that you're gonna write. And they're both very exciting, very interesting topics to get into for sure. So appreciate you, and thanks for coming on. Hang on a second. I'll say goodbye to you in a second properly. Let me say goodbye to these knuckleheads. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. I know your parole officers mandated it. But you don't have to tell me that. You could just say, hey, I came out of my own volition, and we could just go from there. Some things I don't need to know. So I want to thank Angie and for coming on. Read her book, Crime of the Century, Classic Rock and True Crime. It's a good one. Lots of good tales in there to talk about, and more tales to tell for sure. So that's going to do it for me. You'll see me again Friday morning for Morning Extra at 11 a.m. Eastern and 8 a.m. Pacific time. If you like what you see here, if you're brand new, you accidentally stumbled upon this place thinking it was a public restroom, well, you're half right. You please just give us a like, share, and subscribe. And if you want to donate to us, links are down below too. If you want to share out those links, that works too. All that being said, have a great night, everybody. Appreciate you. Love each and every one of you. Stay out of the cults. Use your critical thinking skills. And let's kick some ass in 2025 and take back some things, okay? Have a good night, everybody. Peace. 1, 2, 3, 4.